And good evening, and welcome to our digital discussion tonight. Sorry for getting started a few minutes late. You know, you can do these for a million times, and the technology gods sometimes don't look favorably on you. So thanks for bearing with us there, and thanks so much for tuning in for what is going to be a really cool presentation tonight about the genealogical resources of our library and archives at the Milwaukee County Historical Society with our assistant archivist, Steve Schaffer. Before Steve gets into it, as you get comfy and grab a beverage because it's Thursday, and the Brewers play late tonight, so that's great too. And hey, it hopefully won't be the last game of the year, right? Hopefully we're playing tomorrow night. What we have going on, same time, 7:30 next week, is when Milwaukee went to war on the home front in World War II here in Milwaukee with Tom Faring and the War Memorial Center. We're partnering with them for that. So that is next weekend. It's the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, if you can believe that. And so that's coming up next week. We also just announced, if you're interested, a history and beer bike ride, Haunted Milwaukee, coming up the weekend before and Halloween weekend. So if you go to MilwaukeeHistory.net, you can buy tickets for that too. It's a very safe way to enjoy the outdoors while you still can, and it includes beer, which we can all use some of that at the moment. So without any further ado, we're going to turn things over to our archivist, Steve Schaffer. If you have any questions for Steve, make sure you put those in the make sure you put those in the comments. And then we can get to those at the end. But Steve's got a great presentation tonight about the genealogical resources and his crazy family too. So it's going to be a fun night that way. But I'll let Steve tell you all about it. Take it away, man.
All right, thanks, John. Hi guys, back again. I'm Steve, the assistant archivist at the Milwaukee County Historical Society. Tonight we're going to be talking about genealogical resources at the research library. We have quite a few. Obviously our building, and a little bit of a background on us. We originally were the Old Settlers Club, which was founded in 1869. In 1935, the Milwaukee County Historical Society was established. Our first office was in the courthouse, the county courthouse, and we've since moved to our building, which was formerly the Second Ward Savings Bank, and we sit right on the corner of 3rd and Kilbourne. Shot of a very old shot of our recently completed library. And that front desk is where we sit. Behind me is my boss, Kevin, and the vault you see in the back is where we have all of our photographs. So on average, during the past 5 years, the research library has served more than 900 patrons, responded to thousands of phone and emails, and our Facebook numbers have been up over the past few years, and John's a big help in that regard. I can definitely tell you that. We are the official repository for Milwaukee County records. We have a lot of heavily used collections that are pretty valuable to genealogists. So probably our best collection and our most unique are our naturalization records. And these are records that span territorial times to May of 1941. At that time, in that time span, you could do a two-track system to naturalization. You could go to the federal courthouse and naturalize with the U.S. government, or you could do it at a county courthouse. And a lot of people decided to do that route. So we have many naturalizations. So this is an example of a petition, which was the Declaration of Intent. And you can see that these early ones prior to September of 1906 were rather sparse in their information. So, we know this gentleman is Christian Summer, but we don't really know. We know he's from Germany. We know he landed in Baltimore, and we know the names of his his witnesses. So they're not super informative. This is a post-September 06 petition, and what was done was the federal government standardized the form, and these are far more informative and are really a boon for genealogists. You can see that, it lists like children, the wife's name. It lists the boat that he came on. Looks like Kroonland. A lot of information. So these are just a huge source of valuable information for genealogists. This is a later declaration of intent, and these are rather interesting in that they began to take photographs. So we mainly see this, I think, after World War I. So a lot of the declarations that were closer to World War II, you see a lot of photographs. And what's interesting is when we do these research requests for people, oftentimes this may be the only photograph they've seen of their ancestor, or a really, a very young photograph of their ancestor. So it's pretty exciting when that happens. Civil court records. So this is where my family kind of enters in, and I'll give you a little background on that. I did a seminar paper, and this is in 1995 when I was at UWM, on my father's side of the family. There were two individuals who were, let's say, black sheep. No one ever talked about them. No one ever knew anything about them. So I thought I would use this seminar, which was, how to use archival resources and then how to write a paper based on primary sources. And that's what started this whole thing off. Now, this is an example of a civil court record. So we have all the civil court cases from, again, territorial times up to 1974. So we store a good portion of those from 1933, let's say, to 74 at our warehouse. But in our building, we have all the early ones right up to, it kind of breaks off about 1932. But this is my great-grandmother, Emma Foidel's judgment of divorce from her husband, Charles. And what happened was we'll find out, actually. He left he deserted her. And after a year, she filed for divorce because she really had no choice. Now, the interesting thing for me as a researcher at that time was I was able to find out that my great-grandmother had a son that I didn't really know about. His name is Fred. And you can see that right here, they have the disposition. So Alvine Maud, she was known as Aunt Maud, and my grandmother, Cora Foidel, were allowed to stay with Emma. And but the sons, Charles and Fred, went to the Industrial School of Milwaukee. So that's listed right in the court case. These types of divorce cases and actions like this are very, very informative for researchers, because this gave me an opportunity to see if I could find some Industrial School of Milwaukee records on them. I was not able to, but it allowed me to track these other two men. This is another example from my family of a divorce case. This one is his name is James Schaffer, and he was my dad's older brother. And the interesting thing about this is it mentions that he's at Joliet Prison in Illinois. Now, that is something I didn't know. I realized that he was, had gone to jail, but I thought it was only Waupun. And we'll get to that story later. But this particular piece of information, this case, and unfortunately his wife Catherine had to take him to court many times. Somehow he ended up in Joliet, Illinois, and that's another that's another trail that I could take to pursue this a little bit. And that's the importance of these records. They'll show you things that you really didn't necessarily know about. Another colorful member of my dad's family was his other older brother, Frank, who also ran into troubles with the law. And you can see on the bottom here, he's at the Wisconsin State Prison in Waupun. So again, this is a situation where his wife Helen had to give up the kids to temporary homes until she could get custody of them. This is her complaint. So this is the original action that she filed papers against Frank, and we can see that again. It gives more information, and this was the important part. It gave the day of the 13th of March, 1943. That was his conviction for assault and robbery unarmed, which is why it was in Waupun. But we'll kind of get to that in a little bit. But these records are very valuable to genealogists, just because of the different doors that they open up. Coroner's inquests. This can be another great source of information. It's a little morbid, but it provides important information like the deceased's father, mother, country of origin, things like that. Besides, the part of the coroner's report itself. Like, for example, this one is, you can see it was some kind of, it was either an accident or a criminal case, because coroner's reports are unattended, accidental, or suspicious deaths. So in this particular case, there was an inquest. So you see testimony like this, which makes some of them very large. I think probably the largest one that I've seen was it was the Christopher Columbus accident on the Milwaukee River, and that had, I believe, 19 people. There were some fatalities and a large number of people injured, and the file itself was almost like those starter logs you use for a fireplace. It was huge. It's the largest one I've seen, and of course we have the Newhall House fire coroner's report, which is quite interesting. This one is from another family member. This is Michael Schaffer. He was my cousin. I never met him. In 1967. I was 6 years old, so I had never known him. But in the family lore, I had heard that something happened to him. I actually found a newspaper article first that my aunt had clipped, and I was then able, when I started working here, this information is relatively new to me. I looked up the case, and there it was. And this is an example of, like, because he was shot on the street in an altercation, and he died of the gunshot wound, and that meant the police were involved. So in this particular coroner's report, we have supplementary information, which is generally put in by the detective or the officers who were at the scene. So it's rather interesting. It goes into rather gruesome detail about him losing consciousness at the county hospital. And it explains that who he was with, when it happened, that these two individuals, the person who shot my cousin Mike, knew him for about 2 months. So it led me to look to see if they had worked together. I know that the person who shot him did some time for it. I think it was 7 to 10 years. But I haven't been able to trace down that case, but I have the information. And what was also really important from this was, this is the example of the medical examiner's report, toxology, things like that. But it mentions he was identified by a guy named John Sansoni, who is a brother-in-law, which again was news to me because that meant that, my other cousin and Michael's younger sister, Colette, must have been married at one point. I know that later in life she wasn't married, so, perhaps there's a divorce to follow up on that. So coroner's reports, while they are gruesome and, can be, heart-wrenching, because the later ones will have photographs too. And in my case, that was only the second photograph I'd ever seen of my cousin, and it was on, the examination table. So they can be very impactful, but very informative to researchers. Jail registers is another one of our really important collections, and I think kind of a unique one. So these were day-to-day intake sheets for the jail that used to be down on Wells, and I think that was Broadway. So the people would be hauled in from all over the county, kept here, and as you can see, there was a list of their names, the officer arrested them, the offense, so drunk, drunken disorderly, vagrancy, assault and battery, A and B. So all that, and then where they were from, occupation, nationality, so Irish, Scottish, etc. So again, citing my family, here's if you will recall, my dad's brother Frank, the one who was sent to jail sent to prison in 1943. His crime was assault and robbery unarmed. And you can see that right up here. He was picked up at 11:30 a.m. So that was kind of a strange time. So this was like a daylight attempt, evidently. What I know about it from a newspaper article that I later found out is that he held up the Brown Hotel downtown where he was staying, which really wasn't the brightest thing to do. And he had something in his pocket that he threatened the desk clerk with, and it was assumed to be a gun. So he was technically unarmed, but he threatened him. So that was the assault part. And this is the arrest. And what's interesting here, and I know this only from the newspaper article, these three individuals who were arrested for vagrancy at the same time by the same officer must have been with Frank, or they must have been together or something, and the officer just hauled them all in. So those guys, unfortunately, were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then, so these sheets, these registers are large books that go across. So this is on the left side, and this is the lower ones on the right side. So you see it says Painter, 2820 North Murray. So that tells me at this time, although he was married and had 5 kids, he either used that as a temporary or a permanent address, or he may have had to stay there because his wife, Helen, who had divorced him later, may have already left. I don't really know, but 2820 is the house that my Aunt Jeanette lived in, and one that I later, my sisters, we inherited it. So this is a lot of that. So that was when I found a good deal of information on these individuals as well. So you see, you got 5 years probation, and the disposition part is really the interesting part of the document, because it can give you clues to where the individual goes or what happened, out on bail, 90 days, house of correction, etc. He got 5 years probation, which was amazing, actually. We know, though, from the previous divorce case that he somehow messed that up because he was in Waupun. So he broke parole, which isn't really surprising knowing him. Now, here's James. You can see James Schaffer right there. This is from 1938. And again, noon, and they like the afternoon, I guess. So this was assault and robbery, and this was armed robbery. So it was a much more serious offense. Same officer, Phelan, But it gives the disposition. He was a cook, and I know he was a cook at the Astor Hotel, and he was living at the house that my grandparents lived at on Astor Street, 1638. He was sent to Waupun, and it was 1 to 4 years. They really didn't mess around with this case because he was armed. He had robbed a taxi driver, and he had struck the driver. So it was a far more violent crime. So it's always worth a check for the jail registers. But what you have to do, and what I had to do when I use them, is you have to find a period of time when the individual has kind of fallen off the grid, so to speak. They won't show up in city directories. If by chance, they may show up in a census, but they have to be kind of gone for a while. And when I was doing this back in '95, there was no internet or anything. I had to come to the Historical Society, and I had target years, and I literally went through every year until I found it. I knew it was around 37, 38. I just wasn't sure, but it was worth it. But, that's the only problem, that our jail registers are not indexed. So you have to have kind of an idea of the time. And usually a newspaper article will be a good lead for that. So moving along, county hospital patient registers. These are very informative as well. It lists the diagnosis for the individual, their name, who the contact information is. It says if dead, in case of death. But we have many of these ledgers, and oftentimes people will, be able to verify that, a family legend. We think the person was at the county. They're able to find that out with using these. And these we have a better sense of. Some of them are indexed and some are not. But usually at the beginning of these, there are indexes that the creator of the register made. And then we do have some infirmary patient files. They're not real in depth, but there are different records for some people, and these we do have an index for. So it would be it would be a lot easier to find and use these. And then we do have several marriage related collections. We have county marriage applications from 1899 to 1910. We have some marriage licenses issued by St. John's Episcopal Church in the mid 19th century range. And then we have marriage indexes, which are City of Milwaukee, City Hall, originally City Hall records. So at that time, you could apply for your license either at the courthouse, county courthouse, or at City Hall. So these books are useful to people because what you can do then is you get the name and the date, and then you take that to the county register of deeds to get the actual marriage certificate itself. The city gave all of their records to the county after 1982, so we don't actually have marriage licenses. But the thing is, the books at the Register of Deeds, there's a time limit on using them, so people often come here and just use them, without any interruption. And by the way, this is so Emma Runkle Feudel, who divorced her husband back in 1891, remarried, and a gentleman named George Walcott. And it's kind of funny, George Walcott, my grandfather, Frank Schaffer, and another gentleman, Ben Cutler, all came to Milwaukee. They were all friends, and they ended up marrying my great-grandmother, my grandmother, and her sister. So 3 guys come to Milwaukee and make it out okay. So this is just the application file. So we have a lot of maps, and the maps can sometimes be useful to genealogists, especially the plat maps, because it'll show property and different holdings at different times. So a lot of people are interested in this, along with tax records. So we would have the same. We would have the tax records also for the Granville Township. The tax records run from about 1848 to 1880, roughly, and the maps, the plat maps are divided into different periods. It's 1876, 1892, I believe 1916, and I think that's it. There's another one in there, but they're roughly they're divided up into these different periods, and you can see the changes in the land ownership over time. So genealogists use these quite a bit. This is an example of a Sanborn fire map, and these aren't unique to our collections. The public library has a very good collection of them, and UWM does as well, and UWMs are online, as many of you know. But these are very interesting maps, and sometimes for people who are doing research on their house or where an individual lived, these can be the only source of information for them, because we don't have a photograph, but we have what the block looked like at the time, and the different colors represent different levels of fireproofness. So I believe the pink meant brick. So like it says here, veneered. So it's brick, veneered, wood. These are wood construction. And then it would say things about the plumbing and what type of does it have a fire system, meaning pipes for to pump water up. And then these are the old street addresses, which were changed in 1930. So the collection we have was used by individuals at the county from 1910 to 1924. And it's hard to see on this map, but oftentimes if there was a change to the building, they would literally cut and paste out the new section. They would cut and paste the new section over the old section to demonstrate the change. We have city directories from 1847 to 1902. The city directories are a very basic research tool for genealogists, but they're informative and they're also very entertaining to look at. They have many fascinating advertisements, and then the different joiner, laborer, joiner, botanic physician. I mean, so it's interesting to look at the old names for jobs and occupations, and they generally have a glossary in the front that will describe those just to let you know what they mean. In 1921, the city directory first used the reverse street guide, which is really invaluable, because you can then go by a street and look to see where somebody lives. So, for example, if you have a house and you want to know who the occupants were before you got there, we can use 1921 as kind of a base and go forward from there and then back as far as we can. So again, for 1921, we would have to convert the street number, and possibly the name of the street may have changed, but then we can find that new number after 1930, and then you look up the number and you see where they live. So somebody who was doing this, they would give me their current address. I would convert it to the old one. We would look up that house and then see who lived there. And you can do that for decades. And sometimes it produces some interesting people, and genealogists do it, but oftentimes it's more people who are interested in researching houses. So I've included high school and college yearbooks as a genealogical tool, and I think it's kind of important because you tend to forget them, but I've had several calls where people have, they don't know what their mother or their grandmother looked like, and one of the ways that we could maybe find at least one picture for them is in yearbooks. So this is the Lincoln High School quill from 1938, and it's from 1938 because it has another Schaffer in it. My Aunt Grace Schaffer, she was my dad's youngest sister. So this is 1938, and she was not a criminal. In fact, many of my dad's family weren't. It was just the two boys, Frank and Jim. So the rest of them were all normal, average, hardworking citizens. But this is Grace in 1938. I think she was, I think she might have been a junior. I'm not really sure, but this is her picture. The next one is kind of impactful to me because this is really, besides the coroner's report photograph that I saw, this is the only one I've ever seen of Michael Schaffer, and it kind of gives me a little bit of I guess happiness that he was involved in basketball and track and student council. So I mean, whatever happened to him, he wasn't always like that, and he looks like a good guy in high school. And this is from Riverside High School in 1966. So we have more than 3,000 separate manuscript collections, and the sizes vary from small manuscripts, which could be, a legal size folder or less, and to, hundreds of boxes. We do have them available on our website at MilwaukeeHistory.net. And under research, you can find manuscript collections, and you're able to search the finding aids, and it's pretty useful. We have some interesting collections that are, I think, relevant to genealogists. For example, in our Allis Chalmers collection, we have files of a lot of their African-American employees during the period of World War II. Allis Chalmers was called out by the NAACP for not hiring enough African-Americans for the war effort. So they did, but it seemed like they really kept close scrutiny on these individuals because we don't see these types of records for other employees. It's given the history of Allis Chalmers, it's not surprising to me because they were somewhat paranoid about subversion and communism. So it only seems fitting to me that they would also keep track of African Americans. But the good thing about that is that genealogists are able to see, look through these lists and see if one of their ancestors perhaps worked at Allis Chalmers. This one is pretty interesting because it gives the birth dates also of the individuals, and you can see that there's also women and men, and this obviously reflects the wartime economy, where a lot of women were called in and stepped up to the job and were manufacturers. For example, Helen May Harris was a blader. There was Emmeline Felix was an expediter. So there were some real important jobs for women in World War II. And I'm sure next week, Tom Faring will be talking about that as well. And then, the Allis Chalmers collection just has a lot of really wonderful photographs because, like a lot of the corporations in that era, they had many employee clubs and sporting events and all kinds of different parties for retirees. So there's a lot of photographs. So there's a good chance that you'd be able to find photographs of people who were your ancestors who worked at Allis Chalmers. And they also have Allis Chalmers. There's magazines that feature, employee of the month and what are they doing in shop number 6 and things like that. So, it's a good source, I think, for genealogists. Another one would be the Allen Bradley Company. These are examples of some of their employee activities. So on the left, we have the orchestra and chorus listings, and these give the addresses of the people and their old style phone numbers, GR6 with the old exchanges. So, you could go through if you know one of your ancestors worked at Allen Bradley, you can, see if they were involved in any of these activities. And there were many. I mean, there were, and the one on the right is a good example. This was the National Industrial Basketball League. Allen Bradley had a very powerful team. They tried to recruit former basketball players, and as you can see on reading Russ Whitberger's, you could see he was at Marquette's, a notable career at Milwaukee Pulaski, and as it turns out, teammates Dick Noonan and his brother Grant were also there. So there's also baseball information, and then this is an example of one of their another employee activity that was very big. They had the Allen Bradley Players, so they would usually do 2 productions a year, one in the spring, one in the fall, and these were fairly big deals. They would often invite the public in, but then they were also like in shops. So if you had a lunch break, you could check out some entertainment. But these larger productions were more in the evening, and they were also open to the public. So it's a very interesting collection, I think, for genealogists. Another one like that is Shuster's. And the top part is more of a thing my parents were always saying, Gimbel-Shuster's, and I never understood why, except that I found out later that Gimbels took over. Shuster's bought it out, and they became Gimbel-Shuster's, and then just Gimbel. So these are some examples of collections that, or items in the collection that may be of interest. So on the left is the Shuster's keeping up, what was that called? Keeping in Touch magazine, I'm sorry. And that's from December of 1960. And on the left is the Gimbelite from May of 1966. So if your ancestor worked there, the Gimbelite is kind of a discussion of, who are the, best employees of that month. And, the whole high, this inaction thing was, people who had called in and complimented these workers for good service. And the Schusters, this one particularly seems to be, emphasizing military leave and this fact that Ivory Mallory is now in the service, so a former employee went in. So it's just these kind of news articles and news publications that can be a source of information for genealogists. And I included the Pabst Brewing collection too, because it has the same kind of brewing magazines that have in-shop stuff, but part of our collection is this fabulous box full of postcards and letters that employees had sent while they were in service. And a lot of them, like this one of Sergeant Herman Fritz, has a photograph. So it's people who know their ancestors were in World War II, worked at Pabst. It would behoove them to take a look through these. And they're entertaining just in and of themselves, but it could be a interesting capture for somebody who's a genealogist. So our research library really has just many photos, and some of these photo collections are, I think, very valuable to genealogists. Businesses, oftentimes people are able to come in and actually get an image of an old business establishment that an ancestor had, and that's quite meaningful. We have some street scenes, and the street scenes in and of themselves capture more of the spirit of the time in Milwaukee, but oftentimes in the background are businesses. And, it's rare when somebody will actually be, captured and they'll say, hey, wow, that's my ancestor in this photograph. I mean, it does happen, but not as much. But what the street scenes do is give you an opportunity to even see the neighborhood where individuals may have lived or where they worked. And that gives people a sense of what their ancestor, what the daily life of their ancestor was like. And again, that's important. Local clubs and organizations, probably one of our most important would be the Turners. I mean, we have many photographs of different Turners. A lot of the Turner information though is in German, and it's the old script. So it's somehow, a lot of times it's hard, to get specific information, but an image and a name are sometimes all people need. But we have just many different clubs and organization photos. Again, possibility for genealogists. Then of course there's, Milwaukee families and public figures. We've had people come who are descendants of the Junos, and various other prominent Milwaukee families. Here we have Frank Zeidler with the two elephants and Dan Hone. I know the gentleman on the bottom is a doctor, and I believe he was involved with the Camp 22, which was a medical camp in France in World War I. So there's a lot of opportunities for people to connect with older or more prominent family connections here. And then Milwaukee at work. There's a lot of different work photographs. Again, Alan Bradley and Allis Chalmers, but also Pfister Vogel. So there is the opportunity that if an ancestor worked at a particular place, we can haul out the shop pictures and people can look through them. It's another good source. And then Milwaukee at Play, obviously. The one on the bottom is really one of my favorites, the 4th Street Social Center, the undefeated Rainbow Five. So there was a basketball team that worked out of the 4th Street Social Center, which is now the Golda Meir School. And that was a very important community institution for the first wave of immigrants who were primarily Eastern European, a lot of Jewish immigrants. In fact, Golda Meir attended that school, hence the naming of it. But then as the 20s and the 30s progressed, part of the Great Migration from the South were African Americans coming to Milwaukee, and that became part of what was the Bronzeville area, and that became a very active and important community community institution for them to do different things, sports obviously, but adult education. It was important for the Europeans because of the English language, but you could take technical classes at night. So it was a school for kids during the day and for adults at night. So again, really just a great possibility for pictures of ancestors, or just to add to the story of what your ancestors' experience might have been. We receive new material all the time from different people, and that's really how we get what we have. So we are mandated to receive county records like probate records and court records and different things like that. But we really rely on people to just donate. So that's a very important aspect of our of our mission. And thank you for listening. You can contact me. There's my phone number and my email. Some of you may know me from the Facebook post I do. So I guess I'm ready to answer questions. Hopefully you can help me with that, John.
Absolutely. All right, back to the world here is Steve. So first off, wonderful to just hear about all the incredible resources that the Historical Society has that are publicly available, right?
Yes.
So I'm going
Yes,
to I'm going to share a screen real quick here if I can. I just want to show people so that you had your email up there. But so here's our website.
Yeah.
Here's our
Thank you.
website. So now, so if you
Perfect.
watch the mouse, if you are interested in what Steve does, have any questions for tonight that we don't get to here in this short Q&A that we're going to go to, or you want to make a research request, by no means do you have to do all this yourself. There's a fee attached to that, but worth it if you don't have the time to do it. But you just go to the research tab, and if you go to research library, you can schedule a visit, or go down to contact and research requests. And there you have a whole form that can be filled out that Steve will get in his inbox then, that'll help set that up.
Hey, John, go back to the top and can you just go scroll on the go on research.
Let's see here. Yep.
And then get the research collections.
Yep.
And then go over to manuscript collections and click on that. And there you go. So it pulls up A to M. So if you just pop A open just for a minute.
Look at all that information waiting to be harvested.
And what those individual listings will be are finding aids, which is a folder by folder description of what's in the collection.
Yeah, and they're really helpful to kind of get a grasp, and that you can access for free at home. So if you just go there, you can get those.
I have to say that probably one of the most meaningful things that I do as an archivist is to help people make these connections with the family that they aren't aware of. I started my project because I wanted to know about certain aspects of my family, and no one in the family told me. And many genealogists and many people who come here are looking for that same thing. And there's nothing better than to help somebody find out something about their personal history. I've had situations where two individuals I can think of found out that they had brothers and sisters that were separated when their parents separated and they never knew them growing up, or their parents remarried and they had a whole nother family who were open to getting to know them. So, I mean, I mean, besides finding some really interesting document, really helping people like that is really the most, what I get the most joy out of.
Well, we had a couple of questions then that
Sure.
and I'll be interested here. Leroy asking on YouTube, do any of the civil court records help with finding adoptions? And we had a couple of questions about adoptions. So is there any information about?
Well, adoptions are tough because a lot of that is confidential information. What a civil court case will help you find with is the disposition of the child, and then your next course of inquiry would be with the county in the family court system. But I know that we've been told by the county that they've gotten rid of a lot of their adoption records. They just, they've gotten rid of them, and so there aren't a lot of options open. But what the court cases will tell you about is the disposition of children. And I've seen court cases where somebody who's divorced has come back and made a claim for a child. So there are some things that will reference that, but no, I have yet to see an actual adoption form in the civil court case.
But if you do some digging, maybe you'll see. D on Facebook. What about from another jurisdiction, different counties? Do we have anything outside of Milwaukee County, or is it just?
No, ours are strictly Milwaukee County. But as an example, say Cook County, all the naturalization records that were done at the federal courthouse are in Chicago. So you would have to go to Cook County if you wanted court records there. And the same thing with Waukesha. We don't have those. They do. Or in Wisconsin, what often happens is a municipality, if they don't want to keep them, will either give them to the state or give them to the nearest UW extension. So Parkside, Green Bay,
Sure.
et cetera.
So you showed hospital records, and one of the things that I thought was crazy is the lack of HIPAA laws, right? That's
Right.
is the fact that those things were made, public documents. So Jim is asking from YouTube, do the county hospital admissions include mental hospitals?
Well, it's a good question.
We
Jim.
all want to know about the, it is a political time of year, so
honestly,
you're really interested in this about your family. So is this
honestly,
run in the family or no?
That is, well, you saw my family. Yeah, definitely. I mean, no, that's a really good question. And we're a little confused on it on our end because about maybe 2016, we had a number that we were referring people to because at that time we thought the county still kept those records. And we got a call from them and they said, stop referring people because we don't have that and we're too busy. So the "and we're too busy" part just kind of didn't sit right. And we destroyed them is what I heard in one phone conversation. So I've had people who have called that number because I still give them the number and they have gotten names. So there must be some type of register, but I don't really know what's there. We don't have any, unfortunately, but whether the county does and is just worried about giving them out or not, I'm not really sure. But I would suggest, Jim, if you're interested, you can call me. I'll give you their number and you can call them.
There we go. Well, I think that we're going to wrap up because I think the Brewers start playing in about a half an hour. And it's 8:30. And so everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm just going to flash Steve's contact info up there. So, because I know there were a bunch of questions that were very specific things. And so the way that we find out the answers to those is you give Steve an email and you either can set up an appointment to come into the research library and dig through this stuff with the help of Steve or by yourself, or you can do a research request and pay our archivists to do this on their own, and then they'll report the findings back to you. So,
or get a membership and come in free all the time.
Yeah, if you become a member just by going to MilwaukeeHistory.net. Oh my God, your email is not even correct. Let's fix that. Jeez.
What?
I got it right. I got it wrong on there. There we go. Now let's try it. At MilwaukeeHistory.net, not Milwaukee.net. I don't know what you get.
Okay, no problem.
But anyway, so as Schaffer at MilwaukeeHistory.net, you can reach Steve. But yeah, if you're a member, you can make an appointment and come in for free at any point. So so that's a perk of membership. Plus, you're supporting fine programming like this on a Thursday evening. So, Steve, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge, and always a fun time to go in the research library. Once you see the boxes upon boxes of things, it's like an addiction. You really can't stop and just wonder what's in these things. So Steve gets to be the keeper of some of those secrets, which has got to be kind of fun. So
it is.
All right, Steve, thanks so much. Everybody else, stay safe. Take care out there. And we'll see you again next week, hopefully, for our presentation about World War II here in Milwaukee. And take care, everybody.